Hello and welcome to Squares TV Application Lab number 31. I need a more interesting intro, high five intro or something like that. I don't know. No, this is just real. This is just me. This is where we talk about Shoot. I've got cards, Shoot, Video Pencil, beatsheet, but really it's all about beatsheet.studio now. I'm broadcasting this view on to YouTube, so there'll be a VOD of that. But I've also got a Zoom call going, so we may hear from Zoom as well. So let me know if you want to cover anything in chat or on Zoom by putting your hand up, and let's get to it. So beatsheet studio progress, I had a couple of things. One was I had a crash when you shared a window. And that turned out to be a fairly intense concurrency issue. But luckily I've been sort of like bringing in, Apple brought in some new, so basically like you've got all these threads running at the same time on your operating system, and then something was trying to like change, okay, this is the thing that's shared, but then something running in the background was also trying to touch this at the same time, and they were getting locked up and it was just freezing the whole app out. But thankfully I've been sort of like progressively applying Apple's latest concurrency framework to make sure that it can give me an error message if I ever try to do that. So I sort of tidied up a couple of other possible places that could be happening, so that should be another leap forward in stability. And the other thing I've done is with OBS and Ecamm Live. Now, if you are still, triggering scenes in Ecamm Live, OBS, if you have selected any OBS or Ecamm scenes, it's going to show the drop down on all the cards. So it will just feel like beatsheet did before. So you won't have to sort of click through 3 cards. So that's just a couple of things that I've updated. I don't like how... I wish my webcam still doesn't feel perfect. I'm seeing jitters. Anyway, so today I was going to talk about Shoot's web tech. Like, how do we do? Why does this work? And why do you not like come onto it and it's all heavy and it's all weird? And why is it not a nightmare for me to maintain when we're doing real time communication between an app and a web browser? Like, how does that even work? So I thought I'd go into that a little bit. So when I built, and this all runs through Squares TV. So when I built Squares TV, I pivoted from my mood tracking app in the middle of 2021 or 2020, I can't remember. 2021, I pivoted and I said, okay, let's focus on Shoot and stuff. So I made Squares TV, and mostly to start out with content. And I had all these people sort of telling me about what they were doing through the Shoot app, and I wanted to start doing interviews, and I wanted to start like just learning about who was using Shoot. So for that purpose, like I could have just built that in WordPress, but I have, I did use WordPress for a website recently, but I just found I was spending all my time trying to like reverse engineer the mindset of the person who made the template I was trying to use and figure out what was possible with it, making my own sort of meta documentation, and sort of being a bit frustrated when it didn't do this or that. It's also, once you start adding plugins into WordPress, it gets very easy to break. It's not under version control. You're not like pushing onto Git or anything like that. And I have had the disaster in agencies using a WordPress website, and because it's not kind of like going through a robust process, we did, like, one of my junior developers did once delete the entire website, and we had to the entire company blog, and we had to sort of go into like Windows undelete, how disk recovery tools to try and get it back. And so, there's all sorts of reasons I don't like WordPress. So then, usually when I build a smaller site, I'll use a sort of React-based thing. So React is a JavaScript, so a client-side templating language where you can build up a user interface. So for a static site, you can literally host it on Amazon S3 practically for free. And so my michaelforrestmusic.com, that's on React. The Grand Podcast website was on React. And it was just a static website. So I just like make edits locally, or synchronize it with content locally, or synchronize it with content on Firebase, and then it sort of goes live. Firebase is a Google-based tool for like a database that gives you other things. But then once you start using it to a certain level, you're paying for that. So I tend to avoid that kind of thing too. And then, yeah, if it was a dynamic website, website, then you sort of like have to build a back end for that, and that could be any other platform, and then there's a lot of complexity involved. Like I built Done Good with a React front end and a back end and RESTful APIs. So whenever you want to get some data, you've got to make a call to the server and ask it for the list of things and this list of things and that list of things, and then transform that into a thing you need, and then render that out into the view, and then sort of make sure that everything's synced up all the time. And it can be quite painful. Ruby on Rails is what I use for goodtohear.co.uk. It's but I think it's it's been around for a long time now. It's like at least 15, 18 years old now. It's nice to work with, but as soon as you want to it's a bit heavy for just content. Like for Good to Hear, it is a bit annoying that it takes like 2 minutes to change a comma on the website if I make a typo or something. And then if you want to do like real-time stuff, or you do want to start doing more complex stuff, it gets a bit awkward because you end up having to sort of add extra things to it. So you'll have your sort of main website backend, which will be this process that's running, and then you'll have like your real-time chat service that you'll be connecting to, and you'll have your like in-memory database service, so that you don't have to keep hitting the real database, and you'll end up with this you'll have background scheduled tasks and all this stuff going on just to try and like marshal all the things that need to go into a web tech. And then so in a project in about 2017, I was interviewing a developer, and he told me about Phoenix, and I was like, what's that? That sounds like some nonsense. And I jumped in, and I was so impressed that so basically the guy behind Jose Valim and Chris McCord are two. Well, Jose Valim is basically the creator of a programming language called Elixir, which runs on the Erlang runtime, which is a runtime that is made for like mobile phone networks and infrastructure, and it's very well tested, very parallel, very sort of like multi-process stuff. But he made a programming language that's as nice to use as Ruby, so you're sort of not writing this weird syntax, you're writing like nice expressive code. And yeah, just the way that it gives you the all of that sort of scalability, all of that stuff, that parallelism that you need to do any kind of real-time stuff, to do any clever stuff, is just sort of like baked into how it runs. So I chose that because that's the one I like to use for things. It's a bit more of a headache to get certain things working. It's a bit difficult sometimes, but it's a very sharp tool. And actually, like, I could end up doing almost as much, like dicking about trying to get WordPress to work as I could like implementing it myself. And here I have like total power, total control over everything. So, I prefer these sorts of options. So yeah, just I'll show you the Phoenix website. So this is peace of mind. So yeah, just rich interactive web applications quickly with less code, few moving parts. I mean, that's the thing. It's like there are much fewer moving parts when you do it this way. And then Phoenix Live View is this amazing paradigm where instead of sort of creating a database server and connecting to the database and rendering out components in the client, you've got to load all the front end into the client, and then you've got to like synchronize that with what's on the server. This uses a completely different pattern where it you're writing your code, it's serving out bits of content from the server, but it's pushing it over a real-time WebSocket, and that just means, and it's sort of like baked in, and it sort of means that your front end has access to your database and the back end stuff, and it's all very like, it took, I was a bit scared to get started with it because I put so much time into React and Redux and all these other front end web tech tools, but as soon as I started using it, I was like, this is just infinitely easier. So when they say fewer moving parts, like there are just so many fewer moving parts to just doing a front end back end database, pulling stuff out of the database, making updates, and then like you get all this sort of like extra stuff, like real-time stuff, really good authentication model. They do give you APIs if you want to do that. That's how I did donegood.app, but like I hate it. I hate working on it now because it's got all this JSON API stuff. And then it's got this sort of real-time implement, all this stuff. And you can just write your code in this really nice, and they've sort of changed the syntax a bit recently to make it even more kind of expressive feeling. But that's, so, Squares TV is hand-rolled. I it encompasses a lot of things. That website, it might just look like a content website, but I kind of use it. I use it for everything. So I've got like an editor for all the posts that I can just edit. I can just quickly jump into a post. I literally built the blog editor from scratch so that I can like write it in Markdown. If I put like a link and I put Discord in brackets, it will know what the right Discord link is. If I put unsubscribe, it'll there's lots of sort of like specific functionality to the content management. It's an email platform that sort of like, so it's for capturing email to some extent. But it also does this little about you thing. So I just find out a little bit about each person that signs up. So I can sort of, and like what sort of thing are you doing, so that I can kind of make sense of how many of my users are streamers, how many people are professionals, small business owners, how many people are coming from like an offline thing to an online thing, those kinds of things. So I get a little kind of message from different people. So it's always nice to know. And that helped me sort of reach out to interesting people. And that's actually how I sort of ended up finding Office Hours, for example, was, I saw someone had signed up, written a little bit about himself, got on a call, he told me about this, and, we sort of went from there. It's where I sort of do sort of direct app sales. So you'll know, Beatsheet is sold through there. Also Shoot Browser Remote is sold directly through there as a Stripe subscription. And then I've actually got like experimental projects that have much smaller appeal, but like, I've got a thing for this thing. I've got a couple of apps that work with this thing. I sent Strom Deluge that like if you have one of these and you find the app, you're gonna probably want it. So I've just got like a little thing where I can add a product to the database quickly and like give it a Stripe product ID and a price and just sort of sell it quite easily, and it sort of like makes a nice sort of cute looking 3D page and stuff like that as well. I did some. I'm going to show you this. Like I did some weird stuff with it because it's it's quite easy to have silly ideas with it. So if I were to jump into rigs, so if I go to my desktop, is this going to work? So I was thinking, would people be interested in this sort of? But basically, I ended up building this little animation tool that it's ended up more of an animation tool than anything else. I don't like how this is. Let's try making this. I don't know. Let's just clear. Oh, I can clear the slide. That's cool, isn't it? I can clear the slide without dismissing the desktop, thanks to beatsheet.studio. So I've got this little thing where I can like draw the diagrams dynamically, and I just do a screen recording and then like overlay that onto something. So this is I can edit this. And it's this. I mean, you see, it's like it's janky in the back end because only I'm going to use it. But you see, like this is an SVG that comes in, and then I sort of select each of the elements and tell it, what it should say on it, and then it sort of knows enough that it can do that animation. So just sort of building little fun things like that. And then beyond that, I was like thinking about let's hide the desktop and bring back the slide. I suppose I should make it keep the slide position. I even started implementing a whole courses platform on there as well, but I sort of I didn't end up finishing that because it's just I was like I realised there was other stuff that I could be doing. But at some point maybe I have a course. I don't know. But I did sort of start building an editor for that. And then there's like more stuff on there. So if you see if you do see like what I see when I'm logged in, here's my back end, here's the sort of post screen. But if you look up here, I've got all these different links up here. So I've got my the homepage, topics, the posts. I can synchronize it with the database on another website with this one. I can send emails. I can edit my nurture sequence. So what's the list of emails that you get when you first sign up to the website? I've got this little hi thing, which is like, what does it say to you when you first sign up to the website? You might have come through, what page did you come in? And depending on what page you came in to the website on, or what campaign you came from, or how you ended up getting here, I can ask you a better question than like, how's it going? I can say, oh, how are you getting on with shoot? If they came in through the delay calculator, like I can say, oh, did you manage to solve your OBS delay problems? And then I've sort of immediately got, so I send this hi email out to people, and then a lot of people reply, and then I just get into a little email conversation, and then I've got sort of a bit of a conversation. I'm meeting new people all the time through that little. So it's an automated thing that kind of looks at how you came in, but then when you reply, it goes to me, and I reply back, and we're all good. I see a thing. Is that going to come up? I'm going to keep going through. I'm going to keep going through this first, actually, and then I will answer the question from Big Mike. We've got registrations is where I can just go and look and see who's signed up and see if they've written anything about themselves. I can see how many email addresses I've got. Account links is something I'm starting to try and figure out how to, if someone's signed up with one email and logged into a thing, but I haven't quite figured out how that's actually going to work yet. I can see what messages I've sent and how many people open. Yeah, I can see the email results. I can sort of add people and send a personal email to someone, but whilst adding them to the database. So if I met someone and they were interested in this stuff, or I just wanted to put my dad on it, I've got a little form that I can just type in a message and send a personal message. I've always liked this idea of sort of automatic email, but at any point I can step in and personalize it for that particular person, so that if I do know something a bit more. So my emailing platform, by default it sends them one at a time, so I can edit each email and add a little bit of thing, because if I sort of know half the people I'm sending the email to, I want to be able to kind of mention, oh, I hope you had a good night, I hope you managed to get home. So I can sort of actually have a conversation and say, oh, and here's the thing, and then it might have a bit of boilerplate under there, and it's added to a list or that. But it just means I like having that little bit of personal touch on these things, and not just having a MailChimp thing where it's spam everyone with identical stuff, and you can template in their first name, and you've got a couple of things you can do. But I like having a bit more control in that. And then what else is on here? Quick links, affiliate links. Yeah, I did some. Quick links is just where you land on the website. Affiliate links is I was trying to sort of have my Amazon links, and if people clicked on a product, that didn't really go anywhere. But a lot of sort of experimental ideas, courses, products is here, so that's where I sort of manage all that. Shoot alerts, at one point I was thinking, I'm going to start pushing an alert once in a while into the Shoot app. So I've got a web platform. So Shoot actually does check Squares TV, but it's never been used. But I just thought, well, if I wanted to do something, it'd be nice to have that avenue. And then there's a live dashboard that Phoenix gives you that's really cool for just looking at what's running and who's what the connections are and what processes are running. So I saw a message which I will add to broadcast. So what would you say is the biggest hurdle with Phoenix, learning the code? It kind of depends where you're coming from. It's going to be hard if you've never coded before, and if you've only written JavaScript or even Ruby or Swift, it's going to be hard as well, because it's 100% functional programming, which started off as this sort of academic way of programming, but actually turns out to be a really powerful way of. So everything is pure functional code, and it uses this paradigm called pattern matching, which you don't see in a lot of other places, but it's really useful for sort of how you catch function calls. But so what I would say is Phoenix and Elixir, I think it's probably the most difficult platform that I've tried to use, but once you get going, it's a very, very sharp tool, but there's a learning process to it. It's not for the faint of heart necessarily, but you can go through the guides and see how you get on. So the desktop, they've got this overview on the website. Just it sort of tells you, okay, installation, just install it like this, and then up and running. It's sort of this principle where you go, okay, mix Phoenix new, hello, and then it's going to give you all the files you need into a structure. You can go mix Phoenix server, that will be running, and you can just go away and start editing things. What you will find is getting that onto a website isn't the most trivial thing, although they do have a platform called fly.io now that maybe it's not as hard as it was. Maybe I'm like biased because I tried to do it on a more hard thing. I would say, like, if you do have a look, feel free to reach out on the Discord. I don't mind nerding out about this. I'd love to tell someone about the stuff I've learned. If you're feeling brave, it's definitely worth a look. But like, there's a lot to get your head around, even if you have programming experience. So I've come to this from, like, you know, decades of programming experience, and I'm still sort of. But that's the thing. ChatGPT can answer questions on it, which is kind of incredible now. So actually sometimes I'll just be like, how do I do this? Because it's not coming off the top of my head. So actually probably now's a really good time to learn this sort of thing where you know that you've got this kind of expert. Although ChatGPT is a little bit behind the latest versions, so I've been like asking it questions this week and it doesn't really know about certain features yet because its cutoff is in 2021 and a lot of stuff changed in the last couple of years. So I don't know, it's if you're not scared to jump into the source code of the framework to see what the heck's going on, then sure. If you're like, you know, you've done a Hello World project in JavaScript or set up a WordPress website, you might need to put some time in to get the hang of it. So I was gonna talk about I sort of touched on this. I'm going to see if I can just sort of express this sort of like traditional versus sort of Phoenix application thing. So a traditional website, and this is the way Done Good works. When you hit the server, let's see if we can draw this up. So you hit the, I'm going to use white chalk. So we've got our server here, and then we've got our web browser here. When that hits the server, it gets like all of the React templates and like a load of application code, like just loads of JS, and a fairly sort of empty page. And then every time you click on anything, you're going to, it's going to send it. So it's going to go, okay, I want to show you your, Done Good is like a task management app essentially. So it's going to go, okay, well, you want your list of tasks. So it's like, okay, give me the list of tasks. So then this asks for the tasks. It creates a JSON request, which goes to the server. The server has a look at that and goes, okay, so you want a list of you want a list of tasks. Right, I'm just going to go over to the database server and grab that list of tasks, and then I'm going to turn that back. I'm going to send that back to you as a JSON file. That's going to get ingested by something called Redux, and then that's going to get propagated with a very complicated arrangement of like conventions and configurations. That's going to sort of like update your view, and your view is now going to be up to date with what's in the database. And if you change something, it's essentially got to sort of keep going around this kind of thing, and then your whole life. And then if the tasks have like a different list or a different thing, the way I did, like, you can either sort of use GraphQL, which is a way of saying I want this data and all the things connected to it in this format, which I probably should have done for Done Good. Or what I was doing was just like, okay, I'm just going to maintain a list of all the tasks, a list of all the users, a list of all the lists, a list of all the projects, a list of all the things, and I'm just going to keep I'm going to sort of like keep them all, you know, as much as I need in the client. This is all going to be in here. This is going to be driving this view. And basically I'm sort of juggling all of this data as it comes back and forward from the server. And the bigger the app gets, like the slower it gets to build. And so like every time I make a change to the code base now, it's like taking 5-10 seconds to like update. And so I start doing these, you know, like weird stuff like, you know, oh, I need to make it only build certain parts of the code because it's really slow to do this bit. And so it just ends up being like quite a convoluted structure. And there's stuff that's hard to get your head around here in React. There's stuff that's hard to get your head around in Redux. There's stuff that you need, conventions you need to follow in the way you communicate with the database. You've got to make sure you're not like hitting this all the time, like loads, because that's going to, and also this is, you know, if this was Ruby on Rails, it's like one process for everyone. So you either have a very meaty computer that can like, but each, you know, if you've got 10 users, each user is going to like, it's going to stop while it does each user for the next one. All the next ones are going to be waiting because it's this big process running in memory. The way Phoenix works is you've got when you request the website, you actually get like the whole website. You get a view of the whole website from the server. And then certain elements within that page are going to be like marked up with like special Phoenix commands. So like maybe I've got my login form. That's going to be marked up with this Phoenix update or whatever. Yeah, like Phoenix click or whatever. And that's going to tell it that, like when you click on that, there's some special JavaScript, a sort of minimal library that comes from Phoenix, but it's like a general purpose thing that says, okay, like just look for all the things on the page that respond to Phoenix stuff, and just if anything changes, if the user clicks on something, we're just gonna request. It just sets up a socket, right? So there's just this real-time connection to the browser, and whenever it wants. Whenever one of these things is triggered, it just goes and grabs that bit of it goes and figures out that bit of HTML and just sort of sends it back and keeps it up to date. But what that also means is, instead of like, you know, with the other model, like every time I make a new request, I've got to load in the database again. It's sort of like, because it doesn't know about the previous session, it's just making these like are not semi, you know, like it's new, it's sort of starting from scratch every single time. This like it actually keeps a process running on the server the whole time, which is just responsible for your session. And so when it does this, it's still already got everything in memory basically. So all it's doing is making little changes, and it's just running on this. And this took me a while to get my head around, because usually you want to minimize how much work the server does, because you're like, oh no, I've got to get off the server as quickly as possible to minimize, to make it so that if lots of people are using it at the same time, it's not going to fall over. Whereas because it runs in this runtime, that means you can have like thousands or millions of concurrent processes. It's designed for like mobile phone networks and stuff. It's really like there's no overhead to like spinning up this process, and then you've just got it. That user's just got this session for themselves, and they can just keep like doing as much or as little as they want, and it's just keeping this connection open. And I found that like once you get your head around it, and it is a different paradigm, it's just really powerful and really nice to work with. But it's different, right? So I've just noticed we've got a bit of wall showing. Let's just rotate a bit. There we go. So that's Squares TV. But I was gonna So I was just to cover. So I just wanted to cover like why is this good for Shoot, because that was kind of the point of this, wasn't it? So it's not just the website that can attach. So Shoot can create a real-time connection to the server, and then your browser can create another real-time connection to the server. And then anytime like the focus changes a tiny bit, that gets sent down the wire, and then basically if you had like 5 browsers connected to the Shoot remote interface, these are going to be subscribed, depending on what you're logged in as, to any device, matching. It's going to be subscribed to all the devices you own. And basically, whenever anything comes in from here, it just sort of broadcasts that to the other processes that are interested. So it just sort of sends a quick message, and then now all of these can be updated in real time. And vice versa. If I just move a slider on that, it just goes down to the process that it's got open. This is subscribed to that, so it just gets like a real-time message, and that just gets immediately just pushed up to Shoot. So now you've got like one process per connection, and you've got the ability to just send data between those connections in real time. And that's why like I have not even throttled what happens when you drag a slider in the Shoot interface, because I have not ever seen any lag really in that real time thing. So I was like, well, it's cool to just be able to see the thing like real time as the focus changes, as you move to and from the camera, or as the brightness goes up and down. You can just see that in your web browser in real time, and that's just all because of the technology that I've chosen. And really, like, in conclusion, not all technology is created equal. like there's this idea that you can, oh, that's a cool iPad app, can you make a Surface version? Oh, that's a cool iPhone app, can you make an Android version? That's a cool, like, website, can you do? But we use Microsoft.net in our shop, so can you do it in that? And over again, I've come across this in the wild. I did this thing for this architectural firm in Hong Kong. I spun them up this incredible iPad tool, but only by just ignoring their like stupid .NET platform frame. I just was like, look, I'm just going to build this in good technology, and you can figure out how to like run it on your stupid Microsoft systems in future. And of course, like a year or two went by, they had this tech team, they just couldn't do it because you just can't. Like, not all technology is created equal. Apple's frameworks are really good. Androids aren't. Like, it's just, as an individual developer, they're just like, they just have decades of better design decisions under the hood, and it's just, you can't switch one for the other. So if I tried to if I had that mindset where you can just like switch in one thing for another, you just get stuck. You need to like pick, you can't just interchange one web framework for another. You can't say, oh well, I prefer Python, I'm going to use whatever it's called, or I use PHP, KPHP. They don't work the same way. They don't have the same design decisions. I love Phoenix because the creators of it got Ruby on Rails. They understood what was beautiful and elegant about Ruby on Rails, but they only brought the good stuff. And they got rid of all the stuff that was a bit weird and a bit magical, and they were building it at the same time as the programming language. And that's actually something that Apple have done really well with Swift. They're building the programming language at the same time as they're building the tools that we use to build apps, so that it's sort of baked in at a deeper level. And I was quite surprised when I first learned that Apple were doing that, but honestly, like, it's incredible what you can now do on Apple's platforms with really elegant code. For a long time, it was quite verbose to work with. It was clever in other ways, the way Objective-C works, but and it's sort of almost a little Ruby-ish. Now I like Ruby. Ruby's my sort of benchmark of an elegant programming language. Ramble. Platform choices matter. So when I sort of build something, you could not do this if you weren't using this platform, right? In the same way, you would have so many different problems. And the reason I'm able as a solo developer to make stuff like this work is because I chose the right platform. I chose the sharpest tool that I found. I spent the time to make sure I could get my head around it. And here we are. I'm spinning stuff up left, right, and center because you get good at any tool after a while. So why not just learn the best tools? And then you're going to get good at, you're going to just have that multiplying force with the technology. Let's talk about Beatsheet Studio for a bit. So, Beatsheet Studio, I've had my head down this week. So a bit of burnout pressure last week. I've been able to sort of get my head into it. And I know why I was putting off because it's pretty hardcore figuring this out. But let's just talk about Beatsheet, how that's going to be distributed. So why am I not? Why not distribute this thing in the App Store? Shoots in the App Store, Video Pencil Camera, Video Pencil, they're all in the App Store. Why not Beatsheet Studio as well? Well, there's a few reasons. We've got some technical limitations. So things like a virtual audio thing I couldn't do through the App Store. Siphon you can't do through the App Store. It just doesn't, there's not a compatible way, and I wanted to have Siphon in there. It's not in there now because I've got to figure some other stuff out to make it work the way I want it to work. But Siphon is just such a better experience for local video sharing than NDI, which is how Beatsheet actually does it, and how Video Pencil Camera do it. I want it to be Siphon because it works out the box in OBS, it works out the box in Ecamm Live, and it isn't weird and awkward in the way that Siphon is. I can actually say, just go to the thing that says Beatsheet Studio, and there it is. The pricing is very inflexible in the App Store. You can set one price, or if you set multiple prices, they're all going to be publicly visible if someone goes and looks at your in-app purchases. It's really hard to do trials. It's really hard to do one-off special offers. It sort of wants you to do subscriptions. It sort of makes it quite... I've had to sort of jump through some hoops to try and not have a subscription model in Shoot, for example, because they just sort of want you to. And I've sort of found been banging my head against that quite a lot. You don't get any contact with your users, and I think, you know, I'm not doing a mainstream mass audience app. I'm doing something that, like, people that want it really engage with it. So I kind of want to be able to talk to you if you're using my app. But basically it means Apple own all that data. They own the mailing list essentially, and they're sort of like siloing me from all of that user contact. I can put stuff in the app. I have done that, but like, it's just like weird. Like I get an email saying, "Oh, can you refund me?" I'm like, I have no idea. You know, I have no access to that information. Like I have no access to. Whereas if someone bought through Stripe, I can literally just log into my dashboard, see their purchase, press the refund button, done. Like, or you know, I can offer discounts. I can do anyway. The reporting on App Store Connect is horrible. It comes through at a random time every day. Last week, it just didn't come through for like 5 days. I started to worry. It's really crude, like information. Like the analytics are really limited, and even they only recently added those. They take their 30%, actually 15%, but if you're under $1 million a year. So I was very grateful at the start of COVID when Apple changed their cut to 15%. But for some things, it's still 30%. So there's a big chunk, right? And really slow to get paid. Like it's like you can be waiting 6-8 weeks. Just, you know, it's like the paying. It's just so slow. So like even if I do well 1 month, it's like I've sort of almost forgotten by the time the money's actually in the bank account. You know, so I actually like I talked to Aidan from who does Camo, who is the CEO of the company that makes Camo. And he sort of put this in my brain, like, oh, you know, you don't need to distribute Mac apps through the App Store if you don't want to. I was like, oh yeah, I hadn't thought about that. Apple has a notary service, so you're not compromising on security and like that. So basically, every time I build the app, it goes to this special Apple service that checks it for viruses, checks it for dodgy stuff, and just sort of certifies it as safe, so that when someone double clicks on it, it doesn't go, oh, this is dangerous, this hasn't been verified. It gives, you know, it makes it's just as safe really to distribute. I have infinitely more pricing flexibility, which for Beatsheet Studio I really need, because I want to do like bulk purchases, like all these different things. Like I want to do special offers depending on if you own the other apps. I want to do all bits and bobs that I just couldn't do if I was doing it through the App Store. Stripe is nice, very developer-oriented payments platform. Quite a small cut. I get paid like 3 days later. And I get all the information. I can either look through the dashboard and I can access all of that over an API if I want as well. So I've got total control over everything. Like I can see everything. I've got direct contact with my users. So like I tend to take this model of, if you want to download something I've made, you're going to have to give me your email address. Sorry, like so that's like that's you know, I'm not, even if it's free, it's like I'm going to have your email address. Sorry, like this took me a lot of time. Let's keep talking. You can unsubscribe straight away, but like I do want that. Just total control over how it all goes, right? But it's a lot more to build. And this is where I am this week. It's a lot more stuff it's a pain enough just to get screenshots on the App Store and to get that all compliant. I mean, you know, the review process as well. Like that's another kettle of fish, can of worms to deal with. That can be very, like, I mean, I'm used to it now. I've pretty much got the hang of it, but like it does make you very conservative with things just in case Apple decides, oh no, you can't come in. But yeah, having total control, but it just means more to build. And also there's that DRM thing. There's that like, oh, how do I actually like make sure it's not getting pirated? And you know, we sort of get back to the Amiga days of, I'm going to have to send them out a little kind of rotating wheel that they have to match up the numbers and shapes when they start the app. You know, you've got to do that kind of thing yourself. But if nothing else, it's a diversification strategy. It's like, okay, well, I've got some stuff through the App Store. If that disappeared tomorrow, we've seen that things can disappear tomorrow. I'm looking at X. Like, you know, people have built their lives on that platform. It's just been pulled out from under them, and it looked unassailable. And yet, look, here we are. Like, so Apple could disappear. You know, the EU could do something. So you don't want to have all your eggs in one basket, even if it is like a global superpower feeling platform. But yeah, so I have some stuff in one place, some stuff in another. It gives you a little bit of resilience to the world changing around you, I think. So it's a good reason. It's a reason another reason I'm doing it. Would I sell it through Beatsheet Studio? I think like what I'm seeing with this is Squares TV is a bit more experimental. It's a bit more sort of like I'm trying different things out. I'm learning as I go. Like it's been a big sort of learning platform for me, like figuring out how to do things, learning how to have a business, seeing what sells, seeing what people like, seeing what people don't like. But it does have my mailing list, which is up to like nearly 5,000 people now. But it would actually need quite a lot of work to make it sort of give the experience that I want for Beatsheet Studio for the stuff that's involved in that. So I am working on a new website that's going to have just a single focus on Beatsheet Studio. There's been like Phoenix, the version of Phoenix that I'm using on Squares TV now, even though I started like 2 years ago, there's loads of better stuff on the new version and I wanted to get to use some of that, like some of the sort of uglier UI stuff is going to be very easy to avoid happening on the latest version of Phoenix, and I just want to take everything I've learned just iteratively on Squares TV and just like take the best of that and just crystallize that onto a new place that is a bit more sort of like like robust and a bit cooler. So the first version, let's see what happens here. First version of the new website, I was going, I'm going to have to reach out to my designer friend. I'm going to have to like do some proper user research. I'm going to have to do this, that, and the other. Like think about like who's your target. And then I just sort of sat with ChatGPT and told it, look, I've designed a presentation tool that lets you write a text-based script creating a sequence of cars. The text of these cars can be used with a teleprompter. The app allows simple slides to be created with images, bullet points, titles, rolling up editing, simplicity, and best practices for presentations. The app provides a virtual webcam for Mac. This webcam lets you select different input cameras and overlays the titles and graphics. It allows another iPhone app of mine called Shoot to be used as a camera with a built-in teleprompter. It allows you to connect to an app called Video Pencil running on your iPad, letting you draw on whatever camera is selected in Beatsheet. Video Pencil allows you to load images and media with special zooming and playback options. It works great with an Apple Pencil. It also provides a Stream Deck plugin, allowing you to control various aspects of your presentations. I did GPT-4 for this, by the way. And other features of connected apps, Shoot and Video Pencil. I want to sell the app into enterprise for their tech, e.g. Salesforce for their tech and marketing teams to run efficient and properly branded presentations. They'll be able to share Beatsheet documents as templates with each other to use, containing any relevant assets, and they'll be able to sketch and annotate with Video Pencil and use their iPhone's superior camera to look generally more professional on Zoom and Teams. The app will be appropriate for teaching. I want to sell a corporate subscription with a number of seats, multiplying the cost. Can you give me an overview of a well-optimized landing page, including some engaging copy and feature guidance sections? And so it gave me this, and it was like, okay, cool, a pretty decent first step, like transform your presentations, collaborate effortlessly, Stream Deck integration, and sort of like here, put some testimonials on it, a call to action button, request demo today, testimonial, okay, cool, footer, blah blah blah. I was like, okay, cool. Can you give me some more options? Like get a couple more options. Like what else can you? I mean, it starts to get a bit nuts here. I think maybe I shouldn't have said corporate. What if I added collaborative features? Should I keep adding more sections to the homepage, or is there a better way to do this? Like sort of asking for some guidance on how to structure the homepage. Are you capable of throwing this over to DALL-E to generate a design? Not really, was the answer to that. And then I said, my website runs on Elixir. Can you provide code broken up into different modules to allow for template reuse, styled with Tailwind, appropriate for integrating into a Phoenix website? Use live view where appropriate. It gave me like a bit of a structure of the code. And sort of like, here, do this. Here's roughly what that could look like. And I kind of take this with a pinch of salt, but it does like give you the stuff. And then I said, now can you turn the landing page content option you described into a Elixir map? And so here we go, like just the code that I can sort of put into my back end. And now like, if I want to try different options, I can just like copy this data and like render that up in my view. And I'm not sort of like doing all that admin. And then, I kept working with it. When I ran up against like, I need the part where it breaks open the JSON structure and splits that into different editable components. Can you give me some, ads? So I got it to help me with my content editor. And we sort of went back and forth. But basically within a day, I had a website live. that I could send to someone and that looked all right. And that does, I will, this is this is sort of how it sort of looks. So I sort of found this platform. I threw in some sort of like dubious automatically generated artwork, but just something that sort of like, obviously I said, oh, these aren't real, but beatsheet has some real ones. But also, like, one of the things I said, like, can you give me a pricing model? Like, how should I do the pricing? And it came up with like some ideas I hadn't thought of, and like, so this the pricing thing where, and I've mentioned this before, but like, free option does this, Studio gives you the plugin and the video pencil and shoot, and then the sort of stuff that the enterprise wants. It's sort of like put a few of those in, like priority customer support, dedicated account manager, stuff like that. So custom integrations, whatever. Like, the real insight for me working on this with ChatGPT was, like, it understands like the best practices better than I do. It understands kind of like what people are asking for better than I do. As someone who's just very much in the weeds of my own thing, it's really great to have this as just a market research, and then just to have that go from, here's the content that you should be using, to here is the code that you can use to make that happen, is just a really incredible thing. And while the more I look at the website that it's given me, the more I'm like, this needs a human to have written it. This is really, you start to see those little hallmarks of slightly sort of emptiness that sort of comes with ChatGPT's writing. It's a little bit like, it's a bit suspicious. But like, as a starting point, as something to sort of give sort of broad strokes, it was a really great way to get started. So, yeah, just to summarize that anyway, if we come back up here. So yeah, it gave me the best practices, it gave me some content, it gave me some pricing stuff, and it gave me some code. So with beatsheet Studio, this is getting long. I should probably, we're sort of getting to part 2 territory, aren't we, with this? Usually I run out of content, but I really love talking about web development, apparently. Goals of the new thing. I had to sit down. What have I learned from, I just had to think about what I've learned from, about like, funnels and marketing and all this stuff. And I sort of like put together a little, the idea is like, okay, we sort of go from awareness, like clicking onto the website, downloading something, and then like buying something is at the bottom of the funnel. At each stage, like I want to capture analytics when they come to the website. I want to capture their email before they download, and obviously money is the buy thing. And then different ways I can sort of access these different things. So we've got like, the Squares TV list is one thing, referral schemes, maybe like mention it in the ad. I have a lot of users on Shoot, a lot of users on Video Pencil, so I can sort of say, oh, there's an offer, if you try this, then like to download, I can give that free version. And then like I can do all the stuff with the pricing and trials and offers and the nurtures, nurture sequences. You send a few emails so people sort of know who you are, which if you just sort of send an email when you do a release, they're like, who is Michael Forrest? I don't know. But yeah, so lots of different ways to do each of these. Most of them like would not be possible. So I was thinking about what features I wanted on the website. I wanted account management. I wanted to have the mailing list. I wanted people's purchases. I wanted I wanted some sort of content management system, probably, but actually maybe not. Like, the more I think about it, it probably doesn't need to change so much that I need a whole editor in there. I need some sort of tracking functionality. I need to at least know what the referrals came from. I need to be able to report that. I would quite like to be able to see the funnels where most people are coming in from. And then, just the sort of ability to manage licenses. So this is the nurture sequence diagram, and just be able to say, okay, how many seats do you want? You can change the number of licenses, and like it's going to tell you the total, and you can put some email addresses in, or give them like a link so that to your list so that they can claim the seats and stuff. But I want something sort of quite good for that. And so I've just been working on I've just been going through these things. So first I did a bit of branding, then I did some so this is what I'll just go into. Branding, very simple. I've just used the same. This is a bit pink. I think I want to. So I've got this is sort of like, this is what we're going for here. This is sort of the style I've kind of ended up settling on. I like this kind of. It gives you video, but it's quite simple. I came up with the colors and the style, I feel, independently, and then I noticed that it's exactly the same as TikTok, and I'm like, I literally picked colors and had the idea of chromatic animation representing video. Maybe I just subconsciously copied TikTok. So I'm sort of like in this weird thing where I'm like, my branding is kind of the same as TikTok, and maybe I should change the colors. But I picked these colors carefully, and I know why I chose it. So it's just like, it's staying. Yeah, so I sort of did a little bit on the design. Hosting, here's another fun question that's always fun. I did Squares TV, good to hear. They run on Heroku, which is this platform that I've used for a very long time. But the Elixir guys have made this platform called Fly.io. I think they're Elixir people. I mean, it works with loads of things. But I'm basically trying this new hosting platform. But that's been a bit of a learning curve, like coming from one thing to a completely new way of like hosting a website. And I think it wasn't working at one point, like a few months ago. So I sort of had to turn something off. But I think it seems pretty good now. But it's all sort of designed. It gives you the stuff you need to make really snappy stuff around the world on Phoenix. And also, like, Heroku is really dragging their heels on some sort of AI friendly database features that we've been waiting for like a few months. There's been a discussion on GitHub, like, when do we get PG Vector so that I can start having my embeddings associated with my content and put all my stuff in a meaning space and have, use OpenAI's frameworks. I can use that stuff on this platform, which I still can't on Heroku. And then I did it on Google Domains, which until yesterday it was just redirecting to the website that it gives you. But yesterday it's quite good for doing the certificate. Instead of having to, like Heroku, I'd have to go and make my own certificate or put it under a certain thing. There was a command and I didn't have to hand over like $150 or anything. It just sort of like gave it to me, and that worked really well. So now it's actually, when you're on the website, you're actually on the website, not some weird random dev looking domain. This is getting long, isn't it? Look, I'm going to touch on authentication frameworks. There's ways of capturing email. I could put MailChimp on and I have no control, or I could use an account management framework that lets you log into websites. I think Jose Valim really nailed it with this. The best authentication framework is no framework at all. It literally just generates the boilerplate code and then you can do whatever you want with it. It was so complicated to use every other authentication thing I've ever used. This, I can say, okay, I can just use it to capture an email address and automatically generate a password in the background. I can use it with like sign in with Apple. I can use it with all these different things. The site's going to be Apple ID only. I decided, just because we are on a Mac app and we're on iOS, so you're just going to sign in with Apple. It's not going to have... And then I think, because I also get a certain amount of like safety with those accounts as well. I kind of know that they've got a little stamp of like, this is a real person that you don't necessarily get otherwise. And then, I'll probably send other people to the Squares TV mailing list if they're on the fence about, if they're not Mac users or whatever. Mailing list is Mailgun, hand-rolled, more professional looking this time. I think I'll lean on analytics. I think I've got so much, so I'm actually going to skip to the end. I'm working, there's a lot going in. I'm just going to skip through these. Here's all the stuff that I'm kind of working on before we can release beatsheet Studio. I want my referral scheme to work, good reporting. I've got to get my Stripe stuff. I'm using a manual implementation of Stripe rather than Stripe checkout because I want that form to be a bit more interactive than you get out of the box. The iOS stuff, I need to I'm going to do it with temporary WebSockets. I'm going to maintain a permanent connection. The beta test keeps it open. It's weird. I'm going to detect what purchases you've made on the devices, synchronize that, and then I can sort of see what price to give you because you've already paid for shoot, because you've already paid for this, that, and the other. License management. You'll be able to list in some emails. You'll be able to list out a claim email, and I'll work with institutions. If there's an institution that wants to buy in bulk, I will. If they want them, or if I can just whitelist the domain or something, and then anyone in their organisation can pick it up, or integrate it with Active Directory if they're all like running on that stuff, or like how does it work with a personal Apple ID versus a work one? How do we link that? But I'm going to do that once someone wants to buy 100, and I'm talking to and like find out the smoothest way to do that. But again, it's a reason to have control over that process. That means I can just sort of spin up the thing that works best. So yeah, this is all the stuff I'm working on. It's not as fun as new features to the desktop app, but it's just essential for being able to actually ship this thing if I'm not in the App Store. So I'm doing my like regular numbers update. Let's see what we've got here. I don't like doing this, but it's weird. It was kind of a bad week because of like not very many direct sales last week after a load last week. I did add a new thing down here, which is the bug list. So the bug list, the YouTube watch time went up for these sessions. I fixed one bug. I wasn't really working last week, so that's why 10 new ones got added. So we've got 46 open bugs on that repository, and it went up by 18. So this is the number that I need to hammer down and like see some green in there next week. But yeah, like I was basically recovering from burnout last week. And yeah, just something else to say, like, I meant to say this before. So Thursday, like the week before last, I tried to like take some time off, but I was still kind of looking at my email and I was still sort of on my laptop quite a lot, just doing other things. So it's sort of like, it's a similar kind of like head space to being at work in some ways. This time I said, actually, I'm going to be hardline and I'm not going to be looking. And on Thursday, I saw someone had sent me a drift message. I was like, what's the worst that can happen if I don't answer this straight away? And then I saw they jumped into popped up on Discord and started sort of like making a bit of a fuss, to be honest. And I'm sort of like, hold strong, started feeling a bit stressed. Like America hasn't woken up yet. I really just hope if I can just see that someone else will jump in and say something and that the world doesn't catch fire if I don't say anything. But then, like, thankfully, John jumped in and sort of like clued him in on what was going on. Still, it was a bit of an awkward thing. I'm still dealing with the fallout a little bit. But what I did realise was I didn't realise that he'd also emailed me, and then I was like, oh, I didn't do an out of office. I should at least have an out of office auto reply when I'm not, and then at least I can set the expectations that way. So that was my learning. It was a slightly stressful attempt at a boundary, and it went. I learned something. That's the main thing. So next week I'm working on this stuff. If anyone's watching this and you're not on the Discord, squares.tv/discord, just come and join us. This is where we hang out and you can get help when I'm asleep or trying to uncompress my brain. So that's it, everyone. Sorry, that was a really long one, wasn't it? If there are any questions, any thoughts, or shall I disappear? Is anyone even watching? I have 2 viewers on YouTube, and I have a few people, and I see a little bit of clapping on the thumbnails. Thanks everyone for your time, for giving me your attention. I love the attention. Give me attention. And I'm so glad that you're interested in what I'm doing. Feel free to reach out on the Discord or wherever. And I will see you next week. Take care, everyone. Have a great week.